Welcome back to the deep dive. We've pulled apart your sources, synthesized the key data, and now we're ready to give you the insights you need quickly, thoroughly, and with just enough of the unexpected to make these complex ideas really stick.
And today we are tackling a subject that, everyone thinks they understand. The weather. Specifically, the weather of New York City.
Right. And if someone pitched a deep dive on just weather, my first thought would be, isn't that just humidity and snow? But looking at the body of material we've gathered for this, everything from meteorological studies to urban planning critiques, this is anything but a standard discussion.
Oh, far from it. When you're talking about climate in a massive, dense environment like the Big Apple, the weather just stops being a general atmospheric condition.
It becomes something else entirely.
It transforms into a personalized, daily adversarial challenge. The sources we looked at, they frame the experience of surviving New York's meteorological moods, not as just daily life, but as practically an extreme sport.
I find that framing so compelling. An extreme sport, it suggests you need specialized gear, training, mental resilience,
Exactly.
And New York City doesn't really do gentle atmospheric transitions. It just delivers these distinct, intense, and often wildly volatile seasonal extremes. It really is a relentless four-season meteorological roller coaster.
And that's our mission today, to dissect these intense seasonal shifts, winter, spring, summer, and autumn, and explore the strategic planning that's required just to manage the elements. We're not just discussing the temperature reading, we have to understand how the city's own concrete, its steel, its very layout, actively amplifies those conditions.
So the city isn't just hosting the weather.
No, it's an active mechanical participant.
Okay, so let's unpack this cultural obsession with the forecast because it feels constant there. Everyone quotes that old cliche, if you don't like the weather in New York, just wait 5 minutes.
Right.
We might roll our eyes at that, but the data confirms it. There's absolute truth to the sheer minute-to-minute volatility of the city's climate.
And that volatility, that's the key driver for the obsession. New Yorkers are so focused on the forecast because it dictates their entire logistical structure for the day. You just can't be casual about it.
No. Is this a day for the bus or the subway? Will that sudden downpour turn my 6-block walk into just a miserable slog?
And the big one, what kind of tactical footwear choice is going to save me from the inevitable slush?
The choice of footwear, that is a serious tactical decision, not a fashion statement. And if you get your reading of the atmosphere wrong, if you underestimate the city's capacity for rapid change,
The consequences are immediate.
and painful, particularly to your feet and, your whole schedule.
It's that resilience factor. The forecast isn't about general comfort. It's about navigating an environment that swings violently between cutting wind, stifling humidity, and treacherous surfaces.
Which takes us right into the deepest, darkest mood of the year, winter. Winter. Section 1, the bone-chilling intensity. Our sources all emphasize that in New York City, cold is not just a measurement. It's described as an assault.
That's the precise language they use. Bone chilling. We can't simply rely on the reading on the thermometer, the ambient air temperature. We have to introduce and really explore the infamous wind chill factor.
Okay, so let's clarify that for everyone listening. We're talking about the difference between the actual temperature and what your exposed skin feels like it is.
Exactly. The wind chill is essentially a measure of convective heat transfer. Wind speed drastically accelerates the rate at which heat is pulled away from your body. So the actual air temperature might be a moderately chilly 35 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is cold, but manageable.
Manageable. But if the wind is moving at, say, 20 miles per hour, your body perceives the temperature as being closer to 20 or even 15 degrees.
And what's so fascinating here is that the sources argue this effect is magnified by the city's built environment. It's not just natural wind, it's wind being, almost weaponized by architecture.
That's absolutely right. The city's structure becomes a full-fledged character in the winter drama. This is the wind tunnel effect.
Okay, I've heard this term, but I need a deeper explanation of the mechanics here. Why is a tall, dense city like Manhattan uniquely suited to create this? Wouldn't the density, block the wind?
That's the counterintuitive part, isn't it? New York City, especially Manhattan, is famous for its strict grid system, the one laid out way back in 1811. So you have these wide avenues running north-south, and then the cross streets running east-west.
Right, a perfect grid.
Now, combine that rigid, regimented grid with the sheer, unrelenting height of the towering skyscrapers. What you have is not a windbreak. You have a vast, organized series of canyons.
So instead of slowing the wind down, the urban canyons are actually funneling it.
Precisely. The wind, which might be moving at a moderate speed up above the skyline, gets squeezed between these massive high thermal mass vertical surfaces. You can think of it like water rushing through a narrow pipe or a hose nozzle.
A pressure builds up.
The volume of air has to go somewhere, and the only path available is down and through the streets. This process effectively accelerates the air dramatically down the avenues.
So you could be walking along a protected, low-rise cross street, maybe feeling pretty comfortable, and the moment you turn that corner onto a major avenue like 6th or 7th Avenue, you get hit.
You get hit by a sudden, intense, localized blast of super chilled air. The sources, they cite documented cases where wind speed measurements at street level in these high-rise canyons can be double, sometimes even triple the speeds recorded just a few blocks away in a less dense area like Central Park.
Wow.
So this isn't some background breeze, it's a localized gale. If you are walking in 30-degree air and that accelerated gust hits you, the wind chill perception drops instantly to sub-zero. It truly, as they say, cuts right through any fabric that isn't specifically windproof.
So the difference between just being cold and being in actual pain is architectural.
It's architectural, and this intense cold is often delivered alongside the heavy precipitation of the nor'easter. These are the major weather events that fundamentally alter the city's rhythm.
We should probably define a nor'easter thoroughly.
We should. There are powerful, low-pressure cyclonic storms that track along the East Coast, typically moving northeastward. The name itself comes from the strong northeast winds that characterize them on their northwestern flank. But the fascinating part is really the meteorological ingredients that have to come together.
Okay, so what are the necessary ingredients for a true nor'easter to just, cripple the Northeast?
Well, you need this complex interaction of two massive air masses. First, you need a blast of cold, dry Arctic air, often associated with a high-pressure system that's dropping down from Canada or the interior of the continent.
Okay, so step one is the Arctic cold.
Step two, and this is crucial, you need a substantial inflow of warm, moist air rising up from the south. This is typically pulled off the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf Stream.
I see.
And when those two systems meet, the moisture is just instantly condensed by that cold air mass, and that leads to an explosive intensification of precipitation.
So it's the meeting of the two extremes, that Arctic chill and the tropical moisture, that produces these historic snowfalls.
Absolutely. The sources often reference specific paralyzing events like the blizzard of '96 or the 2006 blizzard, where the city received feet of snow in a very short period.
And while that initial snowfall is, as the sources note, undeniably picturesque.
Oh, it's beautiful. Central Park looking like an idealized winter wonderland.
That phase one of pure magic is extremely short-lived.
Very. Because the sheer density of the city, the heat rising from the streets, the human activity, and the quick application of road salt, it all rapidly accelerates the transformation into phase two.
The dreaded slush.
Slush. The specific disgusting consequence of heavy snow meeting the constant thermal and chemical interference of a concrete jungle. The sources call slush puddles the bane of every New Yorker's existence, and it's a perfect phrase.
Can we get into the physical mechanism of the slush? Why is New York City slush so uniquely awful compared to, say, snow melting in a quiet suburban town?
It's a combination of a few things: chemistry, compression, and density. First, the city uses tons and tons of rock salt to de-ice the roads. This salt, as we know, lowers the freezing point of the water.
Right.
Second, the concrete and asphalt, which are still radiating some residual heat from their thermal mass, help melt the bottom layer of the snow. And third, the relentless movement of traffic and millions of pedestrians compresses the snow, forcing the water out and mixing it with every contaminant present on the street: oil, soot, garbage runoff.
So it's just this heavy, dirty, freezing gray water, and it accumulates right at the most dangerous points: the curb and the corner where you step out into traffic.
Yes, the slush pool that forms in the curb cut. And the risk isn't just getting your feet wet. It's the hidden, instantaneous depth. You approach the curb, you see what looks like a manageable few inches of snow.
And you think you can make it.
You think you can clear it. Yeah. And the moment your foot descends, you realize the water beneath the surface is a foot deep. You are suddenly, as one source put it, ankle deep in freezing gray water, which is a rapid heat loss event and a total logistical failure for your day.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare for the city itself. I mean, did the sources detail the municipal response? Moving feet of snow out of a place like Manhattan seems almost impossible.
It is an incredible feat of logistical coordination. The sources talk about the massive operation required to remove that snow quickly to prevent it from turning into even more widespread slush. The Department of Sanitation employs thousands of workers, thousands of plows. In major storms, they often have to physically load tons of snow into trucks.
And just haul it away.
Haul it out of the densest parts of Manhattan and dump it into the rivers or into these designated remote snow dump sites.
I remember reading about the controversies that surround that, the debate over the cost versus the need to keep commerce moving. It must be a political hot potato every single time.
Oh, absolutely, especially since the rapid removal process has cascading effects on traffic and pollution. But for the inhabitant, the survival necessity remains. Utility overrides fashion completely. You need industrial-grade, over-the-ankle, waterproof boots just to navigate the sidewalks and cross the street safely. The NYC winter is defined by that cutting wind chill, the wind tunnel amplification, and the ever-present threat of the debilitating slush.
That kind of intensity requires real mental and physical preparation. You can't just walk out your door in January without acknowledging the environment is actively, working against you.
It really tests the city's resilience. But thankfully, just as we reach the peak of that bone-chilling intensity and the population is truly yearning for warmth, the atmosphere begins its pivot. The promise of warmer days starts to materialize, but not without a lot of volatility first.
And that transition brings us to Section 2, spring. After months of gray, wind, and that treacherous slush, the idea of spring in New York sounds like pure, unadulterated relief.
It does.
But the sources caution us that this is a notoriously difficult, chaotic transition season.
It is a true meteorological tease. I think the description capricious is absolutely perfect. The New York spring is incredibly fickle. It's this constant argument between the remnants of winter and the nascent warmth of the Atlantic.
Capricious implies instability, so it's not a smooth, steady climb out of winter. It's a chaotic, unpredictable swing where you get maybe 2 days of sunshine followed by a brutal cold snap.
Precisely. We see these extreme temperature swings, fueled by the residual power of the retreating polar vortex, colliding with these early surges of warm Gulf air. One day, the temperature spikes dramatically. It can go up to 70 or 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
And that first 70-degree day is a massive emotional event, isn't it? The collective sigh of relief, the parks instantly filling up, that sense that winter is definitively beaten.
It's a almost desperate optimism. People shed layers, they pull out their summer clothing, and they just rush outside, hoping to soak up the sun.
But the atmosphere often pulls a fast one.
It does. The very next day, a cold front can just slam through, and the weather plummets back down to freezing, delivering hail or this icy, miserable rain. You've just packed away your heavy coat, and suddenly you are shivering violently, caught completely off guard.
This volatility must create logistical chaos, especially for a resident who depends on walking or public transit. You might be carrying a winter jacket at 7 in the morning and sweating in a t-shirt by 3 p.m. That necessitates impossible layering strategies for the morning commute.
The logistics are terrible, but there's another area the sources highlight for spring: infrastructure damage and public health. That constant freeze-thaw cycle, going from below freezing at night to 50 degrees in the afternoon, is an absolute nightmare for roads.
The amplification of potholes.
Exactly. Water seeps into cracks in the asphalt, freezes overnight, expands, and then melts again. This rapid cycle just breaks apart the road structure, leading to massive potholes all across the 5 boroughs. And these aren't just destructive to vehicles. They're a pedestrian hazard, often hiding in pools of water.
And what about the health aspect? Does the city environment amplify spring allergies?
It absolutely does. The sources note that while plant life is blooming, those strict urban canyons we talked about actually trap pollen, which exacerbates allergy season.
So the wind tunnels are back, but with pollen.
In a way, yes. In a natural environment, wind disperses pollen widely. In New York, the dense building structure can prevent adequate ventilation, trapping high concentrations of allergens at street level. It makes spring respiratory issues far worse for city dwellers than for people in more open areas.
So spring is this battle against fickle temperatures, infrastructure decay, and hyper-concentrated pollen. It doesn't quite sound like the relief we were hoping for.
It's a challenging transition, for sure, but our sources stress the crucial psychological and visual reprieve that makes this whole season worth enduring. This is the payoff for surviving winter and the mess of early spring.
That's the aesthetic high point, when the city finally aligns and the weather settles for just long enough for nature to display its beauty.
That moment arrives with the blooms. When the cherry blossoms finally burst, especially at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, or even just the transient flowering trees along city streets, it is, as one source says, arguably one of the most stunning aesthetics the city has to offer. It's this profound burst of color, pinks, whites, greens against the harsh, brutal backdrop of concrete and glass.
It's the visual equivalent of a thermal break. After the oppressive gray of winter, seeing that vibrant, delicate color feels like a psychological victory.
It is a victory, but the sources note that this beauty is profoundly transient or fleeting. You might get a week, maybe two, of that perfect, crisp, low-humidity air and soft light before the meteorological gears grind once more, pushing us rapidly toward the next and arguably most punishing extreme mood.
That fleeting nature sets up the impending doom of summer perfectly.
It does.
Let's talk about summer. If winter required physical armor and spring was just logistical chaos, our sources introduce summer, section 3, as being utterly oppressive. This is the deep dive into the urban heat trap.
This is truly the most polarizing season. The intensity is just relentless. If you survived the bone-chilling cold, you now have to endure the heat, which is not a dry, manageable heat. It is a severe dual threat. Extreme heat paired with suffocating humidity.
The humidity is what separates New York summer from, say, a desert city. The source describes the air as feeling heavy, almost thick, like you feel resistance when you walk.
That heaviness is the key. High moisture content fundamentally inhibits the body's primary cooling mechanism, which is evaporative cooling. When the air is already saturated with water, sweat doesn't evaporate effectively. It just sits on your skin, making you feel much, much hotter than the ambient temperature indicates.
It exacerbates everything.
Dramatically, and it makes simply existing outside exhausting.
This sounds miserable, but the science tells us New York is uniquely culpable for its own misery. We need the expert analysis on the urban heat island UHI effect. This is the core mechanism of the oppressive summer.
The UHI effect is arguably the most crucial scientific concept for understanding large, dense, urban centers. It explains why New York City temperatures can consistently be 10, 15, or even 20 degrees Fahrenheit higher at night than the surrounding suburban or rural areas.
So how does the city generate, and maybe more importantly, retain so much heat?
It all comes down to material science and a lack of natural cooling mechanisms. During the day, the concrete, the asphalt, the steel, and especially the black tar roofs, and the primary construction materials of the city, they absorb massive amounts of solar radiation.
They just soak it up?
They do. These materials have a very low albedo, which means they reflect very little sunlight. Instead, they act like massive solar sponges.
So all that energy is trapped in the very structure of the city.
Exactly. They possess high thermal mass. They soak up the sun's energy all day long. Now, if you compare that to a rural environment where you have vegetation that uses water for transpiration, a natural cooling process, and soil that allows for evaporative cooling.
You don't have that in the city.
In NYC, that process is replaced by acres and acres of dark, dense, impermeable surfaces. The heat is stored incredibly efficiently.
And what is the crucial consequence of that stored heat once the sun goes down? Because that's when the UHI really defines the experience.
The crucial consequence is the lack of nocturnal cooling. This stored heat is continuously radiated back out into the urban atmosphere all night long. So while suburban areas with more vegetation and exposed earth might drop 20 degrees after sunset, New York City might only drop 5 to 8 degrees.
Wow.
The thermal reservoir is so massive that the heat lasts well into the early morning hours, creating consistently high overnight temperatures and preventing residents from ever getting a restorative thermal break.
It's just an unrelenting 24-hour cycle of oppression during a heat wave. And this leads directly to a question raised in the critique. If the UHI is such a documented public health issue, why don't we see more aggressive municipal mandates for reducing it? Did the sources explain the economic or engineering hurdles to fighting this heat trap?
They did, and the hurdles are significant. The most effective solutions involve increasing the city's albedo and promoting evaporative cooling. So that means implementing things like white roofs, which are highly reflective surfaces, or green roofs, roofs covered in vegetation.
A green roof sounds fantastic, but I imagine installing that on 100-year-old high-rises presents challenges beyond just the cost.
Oh, significant challenges. First, cost and logistics are huge. Retrofitting thousands of existing buildings is an astronomical expense. Second, and this is crucial, is the engineering. Green roofs require substantial structural reinforcement to support the saturated weight of the soil and plants.
Right, water is heavy.
Very heavy. Many older New York buildings were simply not designed to bear that kind of load. White roofs are a bit easier, but they require constant maintenance and cleaning to retain their high reflectivity. Otherwise, they just quickly become gray and ineffective due to urban pollution.
So we're kind of stuck in this cycle where the fundamental design of the city works against the residents during the summer?
For now, yes.
And to highlight the sensory experience of this oppressive heat, we have to talk about its transit system in July, the subway.
The ultimate subterranean sauna experience. The subway system is a perfect thermal microclimate. Above ground, you have the UHI radiating stored asphalt heat. Below ground, the platforms are often completely sealed off from surface airflow, creating a massive thermal bottleneck.
What are the main sources of heat down there besides the surface radiating down?
The primary thermal sources are the trains themselves. Every single time a train brakes, it converts massive kinetic energy into heat through friction. That heat is dumped directly into the tunnels and the stations.
Okay.
Now add to that the heat generated by all the electrical components, so the sheer density of human bodies and the lack of ventilation shafts, and the environment just rapidly accumulates heat with no escape route.
So even if the train cars themselves offer that sweet air-conditioned relief, waiting on the platform is what the source aptly calls an endurance test.
It truly is. The heat is thick, it's often stagnant, and it's frequently paired with that distinct, slightly metallic and humid smell that's unique to the NYC underground in July.
And our sources provide that incredible visual anecdote that just captures the struggle. People in high-pressure business, attire suits, ties, formal dresses.
Glistening with perspiration, desperately fanning themselves with anything available. A folded newspaper, a file folder, anything.
It's such a powerful image of resilience. Life, commerce, professionalism, it all has to continue, regardless of the environmental brutality. The city demands a certain level of physical and mental toughness just to get from point A to point B during the height of summer.
It demands total respect for the atmospheric conditions. And just when the population reaches its breaking point, when the heat stroke warnings are on the news every night and the temperatures refuse to drop, the environment finally dramatically shifts.
And that transition brings us to Section 4, autumn. This is the highly anticipated relief cycle that everyone who survived the urban heat island waits for. Our sources absolutely dub autumn the golden hour of New York.
It is the seasonal peak, aesthetically, meteorologically, and I would argue psychologically. This window, spanning roughly late September to early November, marks the definitive, crucial turning point away from volatility and oppression.
And what defines that shift? It has to be more than just a drop in temperature.
Oh, it's a complete atmospheric transformation. The oppressive humidity finally breaks, and the air becomes crisp and dry. That heavy, thick, sticky air of summer just lifts entirely. Meteorologically, the high-pressure systems start dominating again, which brings clearer skies and much less moisture.
And the change in the quality of light is palpable.
Absolutely. Because the sun is lower in the sky, the angle of incidence changes, the light hits the buildings in what one source calls a spectacular, cinematic way. Shadows lengthen, and the sharp clarity of the dry air enhances all the architectural grandeur.
You can physically feel the shift into sweater weather.
That's it. That perfect balance where you need a cozy layer, but you don't require the cumbersome armor of winter just yet.
And the source confirms the profound psychological effect. It's the reprieve everyone waits for and is psychologically rejuvenating. It really feels like the city is rewarding you for surviving the extremes.
This is the ideal time for enjoyment, for exploration, for simply being outside comfortably. It's the season for long walks through areas like the West Village, where the human scale of the architecture feels so welcoming, and for enjoying the foliage change in the parks like Central Park or Prospect Park.
That contrast of the vibrant reds and yellows against the gray and brown city backdrop is pretty spectacular.
It really is.
So we have this perfect, fleeting season that provides thermal and mental relief. But if we connect all these seasonal extremes back together, the sub-zero wind chill, the fickle 70-degree spring days, the subterranean 100-degree sauna, they all point to one single, overarching, ultimate survival strategy for the New York resident.
And this is where we synthesize everything we've discussed, moving from the abstract extremes to the most essential piece of practical advice for you, the learner: strategic layering.
This simple act of adding or removing clothes is elevated to a vital skill. Why is layering so fundamentally necessary for navigating the city's unique temperature fluctuations?
It's because the environment is never stable. You are constantly moving through these different microclimates created by the very architecture of the city, and you need to be able to adapt instantaneously to prevent thermal stress. We talked about the rapid transition from a brutal wind tunnel to a humid interior.
Or from a freezing street to a sweltering subway car.
Right.
The analogy in the source is absolutely perfect. You must dress like an onion.
It's the only way to manage the radical shifts. You need a base layer to wick moisture away when you inevitably sweat on the subway platform. You need a mid-layer for insulation in the wind tunnel. And you need a windproof or waterproof outer shell to block the elements. If you fail to manage your temperature through layering,
You're in trouble.
you risk getting soaked in sweat and then quickly chilled in a sudden draft or an AC blast, which makes you uncomfortable and potentially sick.
Okay, let's break down a typical autumnal scenario that requires this level of strategic dressing.
Sure. Consider the morning commute in October. You leave your apartment in the early morning, and it's a chilly 40 degrees, so you need a light jacket and a scarf. You walk into a coffee shop, which is usually overheated by poor HVAC settings, so you have an instant need to remove the scarf. You then descend into the subway platform, which even in the fall retains residual summer heat. So jacket comes off, you're starting to sweat.
Okay.
You board the train, which might be blasting the AC so the jacket immediately goes back on. Then you walk out onto the street, and the sun has warmed the city up to 65 degrees. Jacket comes off again.
That's 4 thermal adjustments in, 40 minutes? You have to be able to peel back those layers like an onion?
Exactly. The ability to regulate your own temperature is a non-negotiable skill for living in NYC. This whole deep dive has shown that living in this metropolis is about being hyper-aware of your environment, anticipating its sudden, volatile mood swings, and having the tactical gear, the layering, to counteract them effectively.
The city is constantly, elementally challenging you.
And that brings us to the conclusion of our deep dive into the extreme meteorological moods of New York City. We set out to move beyond general weather chatter and deliver some high-value knowledge, specifically by defining how the built environment really exacerbates natural conditions.
And for you, the learner, this required grasping some critical concepts that define that unique interaction between climate and architecture. We talked about how the physics of convective heat loss is maximized by the wind chill factor, and how the city's grid structure creates powerful, localized gales via the wind tunnel effect.
And conversely, in summer, we analyzed how the low albedo and high thermal mass of urban materials create the inescapable 24-hour heat of the urban heat island UHI effect, which really defines summer misery. We also discussed the need to manage severe precipitation and that unique urban menace of slush.
These terms, when you put them all together, they paint a picture of an urban environment where the atmospheric conditions aren't just present, they are always consistently cranked up to 11.
That is the core realization. The meteorological roller coaster demands strategic planning, deep foresight, and incredible resilience from its inhabitants. But fundamentally, this constant elemental intensity is more than just an annoyance. It is, as the sources say, part of the city's character.
It defines the rhythm of life there. It dictates how streets are cleaned, how infrastructure investment is prioritized, and even the collective emotional landscape of the populace.
And it fosters that unique New Yorker characteristic of shared endurance. You don't just experience the extreme heat or the devastating slush alone, you experience it alongside millions of others, all navigating the exact same physical, capricious elements.
So if we step back and connect this knowledge to the broader culture, it suggests something truly profound about what it means to live in that city. It's a mutual challenge.
It is. We learn that while you may choose to live in New York for its opportunities and culture, you must actively prepare to survive its elements. And that preparation, that reliance on layering, those daily tactical decisions, they form a collective, unspoken acknowledgement of the shared environmental struggle.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you, the learner, to mull over something that connects the physical reality to the cultural identity of the city. We know the city is relentless, that it demands toughness, but it's precisely that shared physical experience that creates this unique bond.
When the wind tunnels are blasting down Fifth Avenue or the subway platform is a sauna in July, you don't just endure New York, you survive its elements together. That mutual understanding of the elemental struggle, the constant shared requirement for resilience, is perhaps the deepest, most subtle, and most defining layer of New York's cultural identity.
A profound thought to end on. That shared fight against the climate is what truly forges the unique character of the people there. Thank you for joining us for this extensive deep dive into the weather and architecture of the Big Apple.
We hope this provided you with plenty of aha moments, detailed scientific context, and some practical insight for your own learning journey, whether you're just visiting or planning a tactical wardrobe.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into your stack of sources. Until then, stay layered and stay informed.
Goodbye for now.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So if you've been following along with the listener-submitted materials, last time we really painted the broad strokes of New York City's climate.
We covered the 4 distinct seasons, that extreme variability, and the general, meteorological profile of the region.
We did. We talked averages, we talked high-level data, but today we're doing something a little different.
Yeah, today we are, and I'm really excited about this, we're shifting our focus dramatically. We're zooming all the way in.
Exactly.
Moving from that macro climate map down to the micro street level view. We're really getting into the fascinating sociology of it all.
The human element.
The human element. Our mission for this deep dive is to synthesize all this information we have on how 8 million people actually function when their environment is, for all intents and purposes, constantly fighting them.
That's the key, isn't it? The fighting. And that's what makes this analysis so rich. We're not really interested in the numerical data of precipitation anymore. We're talking sociology, we're talking logistics, and I think ultimately resilience. We're going to explore the practical, physical adaptations required, and think way beyond just a coat and an umbrella.
Oh, way beyond. And also the profound psychological shifts the weather imposes on people. We're talking about things that affect everything from your dating life to literally the entire city's collective energy.
It's a perfect study in necessity breeding invention.
Absolutely. We'll be focusing on some really specific, almost codified urban rituals and linguistic identifiers that reveal this unique tenacity. We're going to unpack the dreaded, scientifically complex, and highly disruptive wintry mix.
A term that just sends a shiver down your spine if you live
It immediately signifies logistical failure. We'll also examine the very specific, I'd say almost mandatory ritual of the commuter shoe.
Yes.
And maybe most spectacularly, we'll talk about that collective moment of awe, that urban planning marvel that's known as Manhattanhenge.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Let's unpack this immediately, starting with the most fundamental fact about living in New York.
The foundation of it all.
It's a walking city. You can't escape it. You have to be out in the weather. And the source material really emphasizes this. It sort of sets the stage for everything that follows.
At this point, you're right. It cannot be overstated. It is the foundational logistical hurdle. It's not like other, car-centric American cities where your car is this immediate environmental buffer.
A climate-controlled bubble.
Exactly. Garage to garage. You're in comfort. In New York, you might take an elevator down from your apartment, but the second those doors open, you are instantly a pedestrian.
You're exposed.
Completely exposed to the elements. For the walk to the subway, then you're on the train platform, which can be freezing or boiling, and then there's the final stretch from the subway to your office. This absolute necessity dictates a very specific, almost defensive strategy for survival.
Right. And it's not just physical survival, it's also professional survival, which immediately brings us to what the source so cleverly calls the sartorial strategy.
I love that term.
It sounds like some advanced fashion concept, right? But the reality, as it's applied here, is just beautifully, brutally utilitarian. We're talking about the universal phenomenon of the commuter shoe.
It is an absolute non-negotiable necessity, and it's driven by, economics and environment.
Yeah.
The material paints this wonderful, almost comedic picture of the morning rush hour in, say, Midtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
You see this sea of individuals, high-powered lawyers, financial analysts, editors, all dressed in, immaculate, expensive business attire, tailored wool coats, sharp business suits. But then, as you said, you look down.
You look down at their feet, and what you see is the great compromise.
The great compromise.
It's these bulky, sometimes garishly colored, rubberized rain boots, or maybe just a pair of beat-up, worn-out athletic sneakers. And it is this necessary, if aesthetically jarring, compromise that's driven by pure practicality.
It's all about protecting your valuable high-end footwear.
Completely. Think about the actual monetary value at stake here. You simply cannot subject a pair of, $600 Italian leather Oxfords or some elegant suede heel.
Shoes that were designed for carpeted boardroom.
Exactly. You can't take them out on the street. And the hazard isn't just a bit of rain. It's the puddles of indeterminate depth. It's the omnipresent street grime. And then there's the truly corrosive element of winter.
That mysterious gray slush.
Which is, of course, laced with salt that just eats leather and suede for breakfast. It destroys them instantly.
So the logistical solution is simple, really. The good shoes, your office shoes, they live in a tote bag. Sometimes people have a dedicated shoe carrier.
I've seen those.
And this all leads to what the source describes as this genuinely funny, but also very focused collective ritual. It happens in office lobbies all over the city, between about 8:3 and 9:00 a.m.
The silent lobby ballet.
The silent lobby ballet, that's perfect. People are standing there right after they swipe through the security turnstile, and they're balancing on one foot, maybe leaning against a marble pillar for support. And they're meticulously swapping out their utilitarian, weather-beaten commuter shoes for their polished, professional office shoes.
It's this micro ritual they have to complete before they can fully present themselves to their colleagues. It's a moment of shared, simultaneous vulnerability, in a way.
And it creates that aesthetic dissonance the source mentioned.
Yeah.
Which is really just the sheer visual disconnect between the rough, rubberized exterior of a rain boot, which screams, "I just battled the urban jungle."
Right. I survived.
And the pristine $1,000 tailored suit above it. It's become the uniform of tenacity.
It is. It's a quick, silent moment of acknowledgement. Those shoes, they signal that you physically conquered the commute and now you are ready for the high-stakes professional world. If you wore your expensive shoes on the street...
Oh, that would be a dead giveaway. You'd be signaling a total lack of practical experience. A real newbie mistake. So the rubber boots are, paradoxically, a sign of competence.
They're a status symbol of a different kind. It's the first logistical hurdle of the day, and you've successfully navigated it. And the need for this kind of, rigorous strategy just intensifies exponentially when we turn our attention from simple rain and slush to the true operational villain of the winter calendar.
The wintry mix.
The wintry mix.
It's a meteorological nightmare that, as you mentioned before, sounds like some kind of benign holiday snack mix.
Right, like something with pretzels and nuts in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But our source material makes it very clear that this is the precise event that causes total citywide infrastructure chaos. And we really need to detail the specific atmospheric mechanics here because it's not just about it being cold. It's a very specific, precarious balance of temperatures.
The technical definition is what makes it so awful. It's all about temperature instability. It happens specifically when the air temperature at ground level is hovering right around the freezing mark, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius.
Right at that tipping point.
But, and this is the crucial part, the air above that layer is actually warmer. And that allows precipitation to melt on the way down and then refreeze just before it hits the ground.
Correct. This is the condition that guarantees chaos, far more so than a good old-fashioned heavy snowfall. When you have a deep cold front, you get beautiful, soft, consistent snow. It's relatively easy to plow, relatively predictable.
You can deal with it.
You can deal with it. The wintry mix, however, involves this vertical temperature profile. You have snow falling from a high cloud, then it hits that warm layer in the middle and melts into rain. And then it hits the freezing layer close to the ground, which causes it to change back into sleet, which are those little ice pellets, or worse.
Freezing rain.
Freezing rain. Rain that freezes instantly on contact with any cold surface.
And the consequence of that on a city scale is just disastrous because it doesn't pile up like snow. It coats, it lands, it freezes immediately, and it just coats everything. Streets, railings, bus shelters, fire escapes in this treacherous, thin, and often completely invisible layer of ice.
Which is the breeding ground for the truly dangerous stuff, black ice.
Black ice.
And it turns the sidewalks and the roadways into skating rinks.
Yeah.
Almost instantly. The city's incredible momentum is just stopped cold, literally. Think about the municipal response.
It must be a nightmare.
Salt trucks can handle snowdrifts. They struggle desperately with freezing rain, which can form faster than the salt can even be applied and start to dissolve it. The budget strain on emergency services, on the Department of Sanitation during these events is just astronomical.
And this brings us to one of the most vivid, terrifying, but also somehow universal examples of logistical survival.
The subway stairs.
Navigating the subway stairs during a wintry mix. Because the entranceways are often partially sheltered, they become these perfect conduits for wind and moisture, making them just incredibly prone to black ice formation.
The scene, as the source material describes it, is like watching a mass, slow-motion, slapstick comedy routine.
But with a genuine, immediate risk of serious injury.
Absolutely. Every New Yorker, who's usually sprinting down those stairs 2 at a time, is suddenly reduced to taking these deliberate, minuscule, cautious little steps down into the station. You're testing the friction of your rubber commuter shoes on potentially invisible ice. You can almost see the internal struggle on their faces.
The rush of the city versus the brutal, unforgiving physics of the situation.
The tension is palpable. It's one of those rare moments when the city's inherent speed and efficiency are just momentarily and terrifyingly stopped by atmospheric science. The whole energy of the crowd shifts from aggressive forward motion to just focused, careful balance.
And if that isn't enough, we also have to address the futility of personal defense during these storms. Let's talk about the perennial failure of the standard umbrella.
Ah, yes. The phenomenon we can accurately call the umbrella graveyard.
I think I, personally, single-handedly kept the Midtown convenience store umbrella market afloat for about a year before I finally realized the futility of it all.
And that shared resignation is key. The materials mention that the high winds, especially those amplified by the wind tunnels, created between the skyscrapers.
A detail of urban geography we talked about before?
Right. It makes the average $10 umbrella completely useless within minutes.
They don't just fail. They turn inside out with a violence that is truly surprising. A loud snap.
It's shocking. And if you stand on any busy street corner after a severe wintry mix event, or even just a sudden summer downpour, the evidence is overwhelming and a little sad.
The trash cans are overflowing.
Overflowing with the skeletal, twisted metal remains of cheap, broken umbrellas. They look like sad, discarded insect wings, just victims of the wind.
It creates this whole subculture of quick, disposable purchases. The $5 street vendor umbrella. It's an impulse buy, followed by immediate, guaranteed failure.
And the realization that eventually dawns on every resilient resident is that unless you're willing to invest in a truly industrial strength, wind-vented, probably expensive umbrella that's designed to withstand hurricane-force gusts,
You're just better off accepting your fate.
a good hood. A well-designed hood is often the more pragmatic and certainly less frustrating choice.
Accepting your fate. That's another core New York attitude, isn't it? You surrender to the elements just to preserve your own sanity.
You have to.
So now we have to pivot, conceptually and physically, from the bone-chilling, corrosive treachery of winter to the absolute opposite extreme, the oppressive, often violent fury of a New York summer.
And we should be clear, these are not gentle, cooling summer showers.
Not at all.
They are not. The suffering really begins with the buildup. It's the first stage of the summer logistical challenge. The oppressive, sticky, inescapable humidity. The material describes the air as feeling heavy, almost viscous.
Viscous is the perfect word.
You feel the moisture and the heat building for days. It physically drains your energy before the storm even arrives.
It's like trying to breathe through a thick, wet blanket. Every step feels like an effort. You start sweating the moment you step out of the shower. And that tension just builds and builds and builds until it's released in this incredibly violent climatic event.
And the climax arrives. Usually in the late afternoon, often around 4 p.m., timing itself perfectly to completely disrupt the evening commute.
Of course.
The sky changes dramatically. It turns this deep, bruised purple color. It's a visually stunning, but also incredibly ominous signal of the approach of what are essentially tropical-level deluges. The rain doesn't fall, it just drops in sheets.
And the storm is short-lived, but unbelievably intense. The source describes it as apocalyptic for about 20 minutes. And the sheer volume of water that drops in that compressed period of time is the main problem. It completely overwhelms the city's drainage infrastructure.
This is a fundamental infrastructure weakness that gets laid bare by the intensity of the climate. Much of the city's drainage system, it dates back to the early 20th century.
It was designed for a different era.
A totally different era of precipitation patterns. They simply cannot handle the sudden, massive volume of water dumped by these modern flash storms.
And the result is immediate flash flooding in the streets. Familiar crosswalks and intersections transform into these temporary ankle-deep rivers. It forces yet another specific pedestrian adaptation, mirroring the caution of the wintry mix. But this one requires speed and agility instead of slow balance.
Yes. If winter required finding traction, summer demands athletic finesse. Pedestrians have to suddenly acquire the ability to, as the source says, leap over rivers of water at the crosswalks. You're trying to time your movements to avoid wading through the deepest parts of the flooding.
It's a collective, almost synchronized athletic response just to get to the other side of the street without ruining your shoes.
Or your whole outfit.
But then, once the storm has peaked and the intense rain starts to subside, the experience becomes intensely sensory, almost cinematic. The rain is hitting the scorching hot July asphalt, and that collision releases a very specific, charged odor into the air.
We can start with the concept of petrichor,
Right.
which is that beautiful earthy smell that's produced when rain falls on dry soil. The chemical process oils released by plants combined with ozone and aerosols. But in the city, that term needs a specific, almost industrial distinction.
It's not just pure pastoral petrichor.
Not at all.
Huh.
It is petrichor mixed with steam, rising dramatically off the streets and creating those thick clouds of vapor we associate with, like a film noir scene. But it's also mixed with the reality of an urban environment. It's the smell of hot garbage, which has been baking all day and is now washed by the storm. And it's mixed with the sharp, clean scent of ozone that was generated by the intense lightning.
It is an incredibly visceral, unique, and complex sensory memory for anyone who has experienced it. The resulting atmosphere, the steam rising, the fading purple light, the wet heat, it creates this unforgettable cinematic urban noir backdrop.
It's the physical cleansing of the city. Temporary, though it may be.
Very temporary. And that distinction, the mix of natural beauty and urban reality, is a really powerful transition point. We've moved from the physical challenges, the leaping, the swapping of shoes, the slipping on ice, to the profound psychological impacts.
Exactly.
The weather doesn't just affect our feet and our commute. It dictates the entire rhythm of the city's social calendar and its collective energy.
Absolutely. We have to think sociologically now. Consider the depths of winter, specifically January and February. The sheer effort required to just leave your apartment becomes prohibitive.
It's a whole calculation.
You have to put on 4 layers, brave the 15-degree air, pay $20 for a cocktail, and then wait in line for a dinner reservation. It's too much. People enter a state of practical, cost-effective hibernation.
And out of this logistical and economic hurdle, a genuinely fascinating social phenomenon arises. Our sources make reference to the colloquial slang term, cuffing season.
This is a fantastic intersection of weather, dating, economics, and urban density. Cuffing season refers to the tendency for people to seek out short-term romantic partners for purely pragmatic reasons during the winter months.
A relationship of convenience.
A relationship of convenience, if you will, often lasting just until, say, April.
It's a survival strategy. It's driven by the climate and the structure of the city. The apartments are small, the cost of going out is high, and the appeal of staying indoors is overwhelming when the alternative is braving the wintry mix.
So the goal isn't necessarily finding a soulmate. It's finding someone to share the high cost of heating with, to share groceries with, and crucially, to share the warmth and the companionship required to avoid the deep isolation that a small, cold apartment can impose on a person.
It's the ultimate pragmatic romance, where the environment is the silent third partner in the relationship. It perfectly illustrates how weather dictates social behavior. When the physical effort and the monetary cost of external socializing are too high, the most efficient solution is to build a cozy, temporary bubble indoors.
And then you contrast that profound isolation and calculated practicality of winter with the sheer, immediate shift that happens on the first genuinely warm day of spring.
It's like a religious experience. The whole city changes.
The psychological shift is not just noticeable. The source describes it as palpable, even overwhelming. It's like the entire city collectively holds its breath through December, January, and February, just enduring the cold.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, on a 65-degree day in March, the entire urban machine just exhales.
This phenomenon, what people call spring fever, it triggers this frantic, almost desperate energy. It is a collective release. The mood of the entire city changes, literally overnight. It morphs from sullen, heads-down caution to this exuberant, outward-facing joy.
And you see it manifested immediately, violently even, in the public spaces. Central Park, Washington Square Park, they were previously deserted except for maybe the hardiest runners. And they transform instantly into these sensory overload centers.
Total sensory overload.
The source paints a picture of a cacophony, a massive layered mix of music blasting from portable speakers, loud conversations, the smell of street food, and people sunbathing with a desperate intensity.
Everyone is rushing to reclaim that space. There's a palpable sense that people are trying to soak up every single second of that new benevolent warmth before the cold might return, or, before the oppressive viscous humidity of summer sets in.
It's a collective euphoria. It's a celebration of having survived winter's practical, logistical, and psychological hardship.
The city reclaims its outdoor spaces with an intensity that only comes from deep deprivation. I mean, the simple act of sitting on a park bench without a giant coat on feels like a massive victory.
It's the ultimate release valve.
And speaking of collective shared experiences that bring the city to a standstill and generate shared awe moment where the hustle just stops, we have to dedicate some time to this unique spectacle that merges ancient astronomy with hyper-modern urban planning.
Manhattan Henge.
Manhattan Henge.
This is perhaps the most profound natural-urban interaction detailed in the source material. The name itself is just brilliant. It was coined by the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it's this playful yet reverent play on Stonehenge, the prehistoric monument known for its exact solar alignments.
And the reason it can even happen here is purely due to deliberate human urban design that dates back over 2 centuries. We're looking at the 1811 Commissioner's Plan.
Right.
The plan that established the precise, uniform grid system that defines Manhattan above Houston Street.
That grid is everything. While the avenues run roughly north-south, the streets are oriented on a perfect east-west axis. But critically, and this is the key, that axis is rotated slightly off true geographic east-west. It's offset by about 29 degrees.
And that specific offset is why Manhattan Henge doesn't happen on the equinoxes when the sun sets due west.
Right. It happens twice a year, usually in late May and mid-July, when the setting sun aligns perfectly with the center line of those east-west streets.
And the event just completely transforms the visual geography of the city. If you stand on one of the major east-west arteries, 42nd Street, 34th Street, 14th Street, and you look west toward New Jersey,
this site is just breathtaking.
you see the setting sun perfectly aligned, framed by this canyon of towering skyscrapers on either side.
It creates an almost spiritual visual impact. The setting sun frames the entire fiery orb, making the street appear, as our source describes it, literally paved with gold. The windows of the skyscrapers reflect the light back onto the street below, and it creates this temporary, almost celestial walkway.
But the truly fascinating part for me is the behavioral impact. The city, which prides itself on being too busy to stop for anything, not for a celebrity sighting, not for a major accident, not for anything less than a genuine crisis. It actually comes to a synchronized, immediate standstill.
The logistical challenge of Manhattan Henge is staggering when you think about it. Traffic, which is typically 4 lanes deep on these cross streets, has to stop. Thousands of people, commuters heading home, residents, tourists, they just stand right in the middle of the road.
For blocks.
Stretching for blocks, all with their phones held up, trying to capture this precise, fleeting 15-minute alignment.
We're talking about massive logistical management by the city. The police often have to be called in to halt traffic on the major avenues, intersection by intersection, not for an emergency, but for an astronomical phenomenon.
It's a shared, simultaneous moment of awe, where the movements of the cosmos override the engineered hustle of the urban machine. The clockwork of the city just pauses for the natural world.
It's this profound, twice-yearly reminder that even amidst all the concrete and all the steel, the massive structures of human planning, we are still fundamentally subject to the movements of the astronomical clock.
The natural world demands its moment in the spotlight, and the city, however grudgingly, obliges. It forces a connection between the urban dweller and the solar system that just wouldn't exist without that deliberate yet accidental grid alignment.
And that structural reality leads us, I think, seamlessly to the ultimate question that circles back to everything we've discussed, from the logistical inconvenience of the commuter shoe, to the paralyzing terror of the wintry mix, to the oppressive, viscous summer humidity.
Right.
We've used words like oppressive, treacherous, and bone-chilling to describe the climate. So why? Why do people tolerate it? Why put up with a climate that requires constant vigilance, effort, and cost?
That is the core of the urban character here. It's the final piece of the sociological puzzle. And I believe, based on synthesizing all this material, that the volatile environment acts as a massive, continuous character filter.
A filter, I like that.
It requires a specific, high degree of tenacity and mental fortitude to live and thrive within these extremes year after year.
And there's a deep psychological payoff for that endurance. Making it through a full New York winter isn't just surviving the calendar. It is a profound personal feat. There is a palpable badge of honor attached to surviving the city when it is at its most brutal.
It's a shared, low-key accomplishment that binds the residents together.
That shared experience, that common struggle against the elements, it fosters something that's really unique in a city, often defined by its anonymity and intensity.
Camaraderie and solidarity among total strangers. You have to think about that vital, simple power of shared suffering.
The vivid example the source provided is just so relatable and so uniquely urban. It's the silent nod of solidarity. You're on a crowded, miserable subway platform. You catch the eye of a stranger, and maybe you're both dripping wet from a flash flood, or you're shivering from the brutal cold, or sweating profusely in a non-air-conditioned subway car in August.
And without a single word being exchanged, that silent look, that flicker of recognition, it says everything.
We are in this together.
We are in this together. I know what it took for you to get here today. It acknowledges the daily, unrelenting battle against the physical environment. And in that one moment, the isolation of the big city just dissolves into this mutual, deeply felt resilience.
It's the constant challenge that forges the character. And crucially, this hardship elevates the joy of the good days when they finally arrive.
Exactly. The appreciation for those perfect autumn days or the first warm day of spring, it feels intensely earned. The air is crisp, the sun is bright, the sky is clear, and you appreciate that brief period of meteorological perfection on a visceral level, precisely because you have survived the brutality of the heat, the freezing rain, the sleet, and the mud that came before it.
It's a cyclical reward system. It reinforces the decision to stay.
It really is.
This has been a true deep dive. Not just into the facts of the weather, but into the specialized vocabulary and the human psychology that really defines the urban experience. We've covered everything from the specific logistics of sartorial strategies and the immediate operational failure caused by the wintry mix,
to the deeper sociological concepts like cuffing season and the incredible visual power of Manhattan Hedge.
So we encourage you, our listener, to internalize not just the factual concepts, the how and the why, but the language we use to describe them. To truly advance your understanding and internalize this knowledge, try replacing simple numerical weather reports with descriptive feeling words.
Yeah, that's great advice. Instead of just saying the weather is 35 degrees, think about how that temperature feels in the concrete canyons. Is it biting? Is it bone-chilling? Or maybe it's damp and corrosive.
And when you describe the summer heat, move past just hot. Use the words we've discussed today. Is the air viscous? Is it oppressive? Or perhaps muggy and draining?
These are the adjectives that bring the experience to life and truly solidify the nuanced knowledge you've gained from our sources today.
Our exploration today really centered on how a major natural phenomenon, from the three-layer structure of freezing rain to the precise movement of the sun, can literally halt traffic and force millions of people into these shared collective states of struggle and then subsequent awe.
It reveals how human planning, no matter how grand, is constantly being tested and redefined by the relentless forces of nature. The city's grid might frame the sun beautifully, but it can also trap the wind and amplify the cold.
So, as a final provocative thought for you to take away, we ask you to look closely at your own environment or a place you know well. Does that location have a specific weather phenomenon?
Maybe a unique wind pattern, a localized fog, a particular solar alignment, or an unusual storm type that stops traffic or forces a radical sudden shift in collective social behavior.
What does that shared moment of pause or struggle say about the deeper relationship between the power of nature and the meticulous, high-stakes human planning in your city?
It's a deeper lens through which to view your daily environment and the tenacity required to navigate it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this in-depth exploration of resilience, logistics, and the human reaction to atmospheric volatility. We really appreciate you diving deep into the material with us.
Goodbye for now, and stay resilient.
Okay, let's just dive right in. We are dropping you, our listener, into what might be one of the most intimidating urban environments on the planet.
It really can be. And for so many people who are visiting or, even moving to New York City, it's not the skyscrapers.
No, it's not the architecture. The concrete canyons are one thing, but the real challenge is navigating the social landscape, the human element.
It's absolutely true. New York City, and we're talking mainly about Manhattan here, is fundamentally a high-performance machine. It has to be.
A machine, that's a good way to put it.
Right, because the sheer concentration of people, of commerce, of ambition, it creates a system that is under constant, immense pressure. And the sources you've gathered today, they really get past that surface-level judgment.
You mean the typical tourist complaint of, everyone here is so aggressive?
Exactly that. We're going straight to the structural sociology that actually governs that pressure. It's not about feelings, it's about function.
Exactly. So for you, the listener, this is a deep dive into the underlying operating manual of the New York City social code. Because that prevailing stereotype, the one everyone knows, is that New Yorkers are rude.
Rude, abrupt, unfriendly.
They push past you, they don't say please, they seem to be in a world of their own.
But the core thesis we need you to internalize today, really the foundation of this entire deep dive, is that this behavior you observe is not a reflection of personal hostility. It's not about poor manners.
Right.
It is, structurally and sociologically, a function of extreme, and I mean necessary, efficiency.
Time. Time is the ultimate scarcity in this city. It's the most valuable currency.
It is. Think about the geography for a second. You have, 8 million people crammed onto a tiny island? That incredible density means every single interaction, every movement, every piece of language is unconsciously designed to reduce friction and to save milliseconds.
And that governing principle, that's what defines the New York Minute. It's not just a figure of speech. It's a social etiquette predicated entirely on speed and throughput.
So our mission today is to move past that simple cultural critique, good versus bad. We are performing a genuine sociological analysis. We're going to dissect precisely how this relentless need for speed manifests.
And we'll look at it in 3 key dimensions. First, the language people use.
Then the physical space they occupy and how they move through it.
And finally, the nonverbal rules they live by, especially when they're forced together underground.
Understanding this framework, it really transforms the city. It goes from being this, big, scary antagonist into a complex, high-speed machine that you can actually learn to navigate. And navigate successfully.
So let's start where most outsiders feel the friction first. Part 1, the linguistic velocity. How the speed of life literally changes the way people talk.
It's a fascinating study in linguistic adaptation. The sources all point out that the cadence of speech in New York is just rapid fire, almost like a machine gun.
But it's more than just speaking fast, right?
Oh, much more. Beyond just the sheer speed, locals engage in a kind of a linguistic shorthand. They actively clip their vowels, they drop consonants. It's an unconscious technique, for the most part, but its goal is purely tactical.
To save time.
To save time and to minimize the physical effort of speaking. It's about reducing the time it takes to articulate sounds that aren't strictly necessary for comprehension.
Can you give us some specific examples of this? Because it's not just an accent, it's a structural change to the words themselves.
Absolutely. So think about the physical effort required to fully pronounce 33rd Street. In a lot of American accents, that involves very distinct movements of the tongue for the TH and the R sounds.
Right. 33rd is a workout for your mouth.
It is.
Yeah.
But in deep New York linguistic velocity, that whole phrase collapses. It becomes the highly efficient 33rd Street. The mouth spends far less time creating that non-essential friction. It's an optimization.
And the classic example everyone knows.
Of course.
Yeah.
Forget about it. It's cumbersome. It has too many syllables. It becomes the iconic quick-release soundbite. Forget about it.
So this is linguistic evolution, but it's being driven by an aggressive, almost desperate need for brevity. It's not laziness. It's an optimized vocal shortcut.
Exactly. And that's the micro level, the phonetics, the accents. But the macro level behavior, the one that causes the most social awkwardness for visitors, is the wholesale elimination of entire categories of communication.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for the learner. We have to introduce a key concept here. Phatic communication. What is that, and why does New York City seem to treat it like, toxic waste?
Phatic communication is, it's essentially the linguistic lubricant of social interaction. That's the best way to think of it.
The lubricant.
That's how the small talk, the pleasantries, the things we say not to convey actual information, but purely to establish comfort, rapport, and social bonds. Think about those ritualistic opening lines.
Hello, how are you today? Isn't the weather lovely? How about that local sports team?
All of that. And in most other cultures, including, vast swaths of the American Midwest or the South, these pleasantries are absolutely mandatory social signals.
They show you're a good person, basically. They show respect, goodwill, that you recognize the other person as a human being worthy of a moment of your time. They smooth the gears of the interaction.
Precisely. That is their function globally. But in the New York City context, specifically during any kind of transactional moment, buying something, asking for directions, a service exchange phatic communication is completely redefined.
It's not goodwill.
It is an obstruction.
Wow. It's actively viewed as a time tax, a burden.
It is perceived as wasted energy that literally bottlenecks the entire system. Think about it from the perspective of a service professional, a barista, a bank teller, the person behind the deli counter. If you're serving hundreds of people during the morning rush, every single second you spend discussing the weather is a second that 5 more people are waiting in line.
The sheer volume of transactions makes that kind of politeness structurally inefficient.
The system cannot afford the luxury of social cushioning. It's a luxury it doesn't have time for.
Okay, let's take this theory and apply it to the ultimate field test. The high-pressure, high-efficiency microenvironment where this code is most brutally enforced. The deli interaction.
The deli interaction is perfect. It's not just about getting food, it's a test. It's about demonstrating your social preparedness, your cognitive alignment with the city's operational rhythm.
So paint the picture for us.
Okay, so imagine it. It's 8:00 a.m. The line is 8 people deep, but that queue is moving at a frantic pace. The person behind the counter, let's call him the deli commander, is operating with military precision. They are a master of high-volume efficiency.
And let's be clear, they are not there to be your friend. They're there to process your order and move on to the next one, instantly.
Correct. So you finally reach the front of the line. There's this brief pause before they address you. It's usually just a raised eyebrow or a sharp nod. And that is your entire window of opportunity. That's it.
And in that split second, the deli commander is already doing mental triage, right? They're estimating how long your transaction is going to take.
You must execute your order flawlessly, immediately, and with zero conversational cushioning.
Now, I want to challenge that premise just a little. Is there a difference between, say, a quiet bodega in the middle of a sleepy afternoon and a flagship deli near a commuter hub at rush hour? Does this intensity scale?
That's a fantastic and crucial distinction. Yes, of course, the intensity scales with the density of the moment. If you're the only person in a tiny corner store at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, the code relaxes. You might get a brief nod, maybe even a, how's it going?
So there's some humanity there.
There is. But the prevailing default mode, the one that really defines the culture, is the rush hour mentality. Because in New York, rush hour is practically a 7-hour state of being. The local always defaults to the fastest, most efficient option, even during a lull, just to keep that muscle memory sharp.
So to operate in that default state, the language itself has to transform. We have to move from a polite request to a direct command.
The analysis of linguistic reduction here is absolutely vital. The standard, polite, full-sentence structure we all learn, good morning, can I please have an everything bagel toasted with plain cream cheese and also a large cup of black coffee, and I'll take that to go, thank you.
That whole sentence is perceived as just cumbersome. It wastes at least 5 seconds, and it signals to everyone that you have an inefficient, unprepared mind.
It sounds like you're opening a negotiation. And what the deli commander needs is not a conversation. They need raw, compressed data.
Data.
Precisely. The command structure moves toward extreme, military-like brevity. We shift away from the traditional subject-verb-object format. What emerges is often just a data stream of object-adjective specification.
You eliminate the I, the could, the please, the have. You're just presenting the required items and their modifications as a rapid list.
You're just listing the components required for assembly. It's an instruction set.
So the resulting linguistic form is?
It's condensed. It's almost robotic. It's everything bagel, toasted, cream cheese, coffee, black, large, to go. That sequence provides the maximum necessary information with the minimal sonic friction.
And in doing that, you're respecting the commander's time.
You're respecting the system. And maybe, most importantly, you're respecting the time of every single person queued up behind you.
Which brings us to it. The ultimate sin of the New York social contract. The one thing that's almost punishable by death in this high-pressure environment.
Indecision. Or hesitation.
To be unprepared.
To be unprepared when you reach the front of that line is a total structural breach of the social contract. It shows a fundamental disrespect for the one shared resource everyone is protecting.
Time. The rule is simple. It's non-negotiable.
Know what you want before you reach the front. If you're still staring up at the menu board, debating the merits of lox versus scallion cream cheese when the commander's eyes lock onto yours, you are structurally undermining the entire flow of the city's metabolism.
And that hesitation, it creates a visible, almost physical social friction. You can feel it.
You will feel the collective irritation of the people behind you. You'll hear the sighs, the shuffling feet. And it's not because those people hate you personally. It's because you are now the structural weak point. You are the blockage in the high-efficiency system.
You are costing everyone else time that they have already mentally allocated to their commute, to their first meeting, to their next transaction.
So the brevity of the language, it's not intended to be hostile. It's intended to be precise, functional, and efficient. It is a tool for maintaining systemic throughput.
It really is the difference between sending a polite, flowery email with 6 paragraphs of introduction.
And just sending a bulleted list of the essential action items. The city demands the bulleted list every single time.
And this extends beyond the deli, right?
Right.
If you ask for directions.
Same principle. The expectation is you give your current location and your desired destination with zero preamble. You want the fastest route, not a friendly chat about the landmarks you might see along the way.
Okay, so let's transition that need for speed. We're moving from verbal efficiency to physical movement. We're leaving the deli and we're heading out onto the streets for part 2. The physical flow, sidewalk etiquette, and movement. This is where that analogy of the city as a complex machine really takes hold.
It really does. If the linguistic interactions are about quick, clean transactions, then physical movement is all about maintaining critical flow dynamics in one of the most densely populated pedestrian zones in the world.
And the sources make a fantastic point here, an analogy that once you see it, you can't unsee it. The sidewalk is a highway. It has lanes.
This is maybe the single hardest conceptual barrier for visitors from less dense areas to overcome. It's a total paradigm shift.
How so?
Well, they view the sidewalk as this large, shared, undifferentiated space. A place for meandering, for window shopping, for ambling along.
Whereas New Yorkers view it as a multi-lane pedestrian freeway, and it's governed by unwritten, yet very strictly enforced, traffic laws.
And those rules mirror vehicular traffic almost perfectly. You have to move with the flow, which means generally staying to the right. And if you need to pass someone who is moving slower than you,
you execute that maneuver quickly and decisively by passing on the left, just like on a highway.
Exactly. The core principle, the only thing that matters, is unimpeded forward movement. And just like stopping your car dead in the middle of a busy highway is dangerous and illegal.
The major breach of conduct on the sidewalk is the sudden stop. Stopping abruptly in the middle of the pavement for no good reason.
The absolute worst. To check a phone, to look up at a map, or just to stand there and admire the architecture in a highly congested area like Midtown or Soho.
That sudden stop, it's like a physical violence to the system.
It is. It directly causes a pedestrian traffic jam. It creates this domino effect, a kinetic chain reaction that ripples backward. It forces everyone behind you to break their stride, to swerve, to potentially collide with each other.
You're not just wasting your own time at that point. You are disrupting the shared resources of space and time for hundreds of other people.
And this friction, this constant disruption, generates a very specific and recognizable psychological state that locals experience constantly.
And it has a great name.
It does. The sources label it sidewalk rage.
Which isn't necessarily like genuine murderous anger.
No, not at all. It's that intense flash of visceral annoyance that's generated by preventable inefficiency. It's frustration at the violation of these shared unspoken rules.
So what triggers it most reliably? What's the number one cause of sidewalk rage?
Oh, the prime trigger, as noted in all the sources, is the group of tourists walking 3 abreast, side by side, effectively using their collective width to monopolize and block the entire pedestrian flow.
And usually moving slowly while they do it. I can feel my blood pressure rising just describing it.
Because they're treating a multi-lane, high-speed thoroughfare like it's a suburban cul-de-sac where they have all the time in the world to just chat leisurely.
It's a structural imposition on everyone else's journey, and the person behind them is now faced with a choice.
Right. You either slow down and become inefficient yourself, or you aggressively enforce the flow of traffic. The frustration is exponential because it forces you to take countermeasures.
Which brings us to the locals' required immediate response, the aggressive overtake.
This maneuver is so fascinating because it's a matter of both self-preservation and system integrity. It's not a gentle weave, it's more of a surgical strike.
Describe it.
It involves the local speeding up dramatically, identifying the minimal possible gap between the obstruction and the curb or the building, and then slicing through that gap just before it closes.
And it's often paired with nonverbal cues to enforce the code.
Absolutely. The nonverbal cues are critical. They're communicating disapproval and reinforcing the rule.
So what are they? What are these signals?
It's a combination of physical presence and sound. The heavy, exaggerated sigh is a really powerful communication tool. It signals, I was just forced to expend unnecessary energy and time because of your inefficient behavior.
I've definitely heard that one.
Sometimes it's more direct. A deliberate, yet still controlled, shoulder bump to physically communicate the boundary violation. Or the swift, direct, that said with a tone of functional annoyance, not a polite request.
So the aggression isn't personal, it's functional, it's a corrective mechanism.
It is. It's a mechanism for maintaining flow integrity. It's to ensure the speed of the city doesn't grind to a complete halt because of one blockage.
It sounds exhausting, honestly, but also completely necessary if the city's going to function at all.
That is the cost of living at this velocity. And if the aggressive overtake is the active enforcement of the rules, then our next topic, jaywalking, is the passive, calculated enforcement of efficiency over regulation.
Jaywalking in New York. This is maybe the ultimate signifier that you understand the city's real operational priorities. We have to contrast this with other global cultures.
Yes, places where crossing on a red light is strictly illegal, socially taboo, and, dangerous to your wallet or even your safety.
But in NYC, traffic lights, at least for pedestrians, are viewed very differently.
They're viewed merely as suggestions, or maybe more accurately, as advisory notes. They are simply one piece of input into a very sophisticated personal risk calculation matrix that is constantly running in your head.
Meaning the decision to cross the street isn't based on the color of the light. It's based on observable physical reality.
Exactly. The action is based entirely on a calculated risk assessment. Are there cars coming? And if so, are they moving fast enough to actually be a threat? If the street is clear for 30 or 40 feet in either direction, the light is completely irrelevant.
The efficient choice is to cross immediately. Save that 45 seconds of waiting time.
And that saved time is folded right back into the local's personal time budget for the day. It's a resource to be hoarded.
The sources make a really powerful point about this. Standing rigidly on an empty street corner waiting for the walk sign instantly identifies you as an outsider.
Because it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the city's core value, efficiency. It shows a deference to an arbitrary abstract rule. The little red, hand over immediate, concrete necessity, which is the empty street in front of you.
Locals are constantly optimizing their route, their time budget. Waiting unnecessarily violates that contract you have with yourself.
It's inefficiency for its own sake. And it betrays a mentality that just assumes a slower, more patient pace of life, which is a luxury New York doesn't have.
And it also signals, I think, a lack of comfort with the calculated risk itself, which is a required psychological component of operating in the city. You have to be willing to make these split-second decisions based on incomplete information.
That is the deeper layer. The New Yorker is always engaging in rapid calculation. Velocity of oncoming traffic, distance to the other side, clear windows of opportunity. This cognitive state is mandatory. Waiting patiently implies a relaxation of that vigilance.
So the physical flow rules are simple. Move fast, stick to your lanes, prioritize clear passage over everything else, and never wait when efficiency dictates movement.
It's an unspoken agreement to maximize everyone's throughput. A frantic, but somehow synchronized human machine.
Okay, so we've navigated the linguistic speed of the deli and the kinetic speed of the streets. Now let's go underground. This is where the behavioral rules, they don't just change, they flip entirely.
It's a complete reversal. We move from high-speed, aggressive action to intense, deliberate stillness and avoidance. This is part 3. The nonverbal code, civil inattention underground.
The subway car. It is the ultimate confined space. The city's density is suddenly concentrated, forcing total strangers into this intimate, forced proximity.
And that creates a deeply specific sensory dynamic. And it demands a complete reversal of the social code we just spent all this time discussing.
That's right. Above ground, efficiency demands engagement. Quick, focused attention to get things done. But underground, the environment dictates that efficiency now means the exact opposite. It means non-engagement.
You're forced into extremely close physical proximity with strangers, yet the social code demands you create an intense social buffer to manage that unwanted intimacy.
And the number one rule is stark. It's absolute. You do not make eye contact. You might be close enough to hear the person next to you breathing, but you must act as if they are, in all relevant social aspects, completely invisible.
This is a textbook example of a behavioral adaptation to density. And this is where we need to bring in that powerful sociological term that defines this exact behavior.
Let's spend a little time on this term because it's so important to understanding the city.
The phenomenon is called civil inattention. It's a concept that was developed by the seminal sociologist Erving Goffman, and it perfectly captures this specific urban response.
So what did Goffman mean by that?
Well, Goffman argued that in these densely populated urban settings, we're constantly encountering strangers in fleeting public spaces. We can't possibly engage with every single person we see, but we also can't actively ignore them because that would signal hostility.
So civil inattention is the necessary middle ground.
It is exactly the middle ground. It means you politely acknowledge someone's presence. You don't bump into them or actively dismiss them, but you simultaneously and deliberately never engage. You manage the forced physical intimacy by maintaining a social and psychological distance. You are physically present, but you are not available for interaction.
And the required behavior for this is highly ritualized. There's a script for where your eyes and your attention must be directed.
The sources detail these behaviors perfectly. Look at your phone. Stare intently at the subway advertisements, even if you've seen them 1,000 times. Study the subway map on the ceiling. Or, this is the most common one, adopt the downward gaze. Look directly at the floor between your feet.
Your gaze must be pointedly averted and fixed on an impersonal object. Anything but another person.
Anything but another person.
But why? Why is staring perceived as so aggressive in this specific confined space? A quick glance is fine on the street. Why the absolute severity of the rule down here?
Because the subway car is a pressure cooker. The close proximity dramatically heightens all sensory input. It makes any perceived threat feel more immediate and, crucially, less avoidable.
So above ground, if someone looks at you strangely, you can just cross the street, you can speed up, you can divert your route. You have an escape mechanism.
But in that confined metal tube, there is no escape.
There's nowhere to go.
Nowhere. So if you stare, you are violating that fragile, unspoken contract of non-hostility. You're suggesting interest or inspection or possibly confrontation, and it's the confrontation that the confined space cannot safely absorb or diffuse.
So maintaining civil inattention is a self-imposed, mandatory psychological barrier. It's a shield against perceived threat or just unwanted social interaction.
It is a protective mechanism for the entire carriage. It ensures that the 80 people packed into that space can coexist peacefully by mutually agreeing to become socially invisible to one another. The efficiency here isn't about physical speed. It's about minimizing social overhead and avoiding conflict in a space where escape is physically impossible.
It's social engineering for density management. We all just agree, non-verbally, to pretend that the spatial boundaries of our personal bubbles are still intact, even when they've physically collapsed on top of each other.
And this code is so strong that when you breach it, when you accidentally catch someone's eye and hold it for even a split second too long, it causes immediate, palpable discomfort. Both parties feel compelled to look away, sometimes exaggeratedly, just to confirm that the breach was an accident and the contract is still in place.
But the sources noted this one fascinating, almost beautiful exception to this ironclad rule, a kind of necessary pressure release valve that actually relies on making eye contact.
Ah, yes, the eye roll bonding moment. This is such a brilliant counterpoint because it proves the rule through its temporary shared violation.
And it's not just any awkward event that can trigger this. It has to be something truly universally bizarre.
The conditions have to be right. It has to be something so anomalous, so far outside the accepted monotonous norm of subway life, that it momentarily and justifiably fractures that civil inattention barrier.
The mariachi band example from the sources is perfect, but it could be anything.
It could be anything. Someone carrying an absurdly large, strange piece of furniture onto the train. A couple having a heated argument about a truly trivial topic. A sudden, unexplained system malfunction that throws everyone's timing and sanity into chaos.
And the moment happens when one New Yorker, having processed the absurdity of the situation, makes brief eye contact with another, totally separate New Yorker, and it has to be fleeting.
That shared, fleeting glance, coupled with the inevitable silent eye roll or shake of the head, it performs a vital social function. It serves as a silent, immediate communication of a shared local context.
It says, can you believe this?
It says, this is ridiculous. We both know the rules, and this moment defines all of them. So for 1 second, we can share in the acknowledgement of its absurdity.
It's like a 2-second creation of a micro-community. It's built on a shared experience, and it relieves the tension of the absurdity without requiring a single word to be spoken.
Precisely. Both parties understand the shared context, the chaos and the unspoken rules. And that mutual understanding allows for this brief moment of connection before the civil inattention shield snaps right back into place. It confirms for both people that they are locals who understand the theater of the city.
It's highly efficient bonding.
The most efficient.
I have to ask, though, does this extreme efficiency, especially in the linguistic realm we talked about, does it ever cross the line into genuine hostility, or is it always just functional?
That's where the nuance is so critical. For the recipient, the tourist, the newcomer, the clipped language, and the lack of a smile often feel hostile. Subjectively, it is. But from the sender's perspective, it is almost always purely functional.
What?
But the system is designed to punish inefficiency. And that punishment is delivered quickly and harshly. If you hesitate in the deli line, the reaction might be a sharp eye roll and a loud "next." That sudden dismissal is intended to make you feel bad, but the root cause is the systemic friction you created, not some personal hatred.
So the line between necessary enforcement and actual rudeness is paper thin, and it's entirely subjective.
It is. But the operating system of the city will prioritize efficiency over emotional comfort every single time.
This deep dive has really provided a detailed operating manual. It's moved us past subjective feelings and into a functional analysis. So now let's wrap this up in our outro and synthesize what we've learned for you, the learner.
I think the framework is crystal clear now. The key to mastering the New York Minute isn't about becoming hostile yourself. It's about mastering the art of velocity and decisiveness.
We started by dismantling that myth of rudeness, and we replaced it with the structural imperative of efficiency, which is driven by time scarcity and extreme density.
And the entire New York Social Code, as we've seen, really distills down to core key mandates, 4 rules that maintain the synchronized high-speed dance of the city.
Mandate 1, be brief. Eliminate all the unnecessary pleasantries, all that phatic communication, all the conversational padding. You need to treat your transactional language like a rapid-fire bulleted list of essential data.
Mandate 2, be decisive. Know your order, know your direction, and execute immediately when the opportunity arises. Hesitation is the structural weak point that invites swift social correction from the system.
Mandate 3, walk fast. Treat the pavement like a multi-lane highway. Stick to your side, maintain the flow, and be prepared to enforce the rules against slow, 3-abreast walkers, or risk triggering sidewalk rage in others and yourself.
And Mandate 4, keep your eyes to yourself on the train. Maintain civil inattention to manage that forced physical proximity and minimize social overhead. You only break the rule for that momentary, shared, absurd, eye-roll bonding moment.
The crucial takeaway here, the ultimate insight for you to hold on to, is that the directness, the clipped speech, the aggressive overtake on the sidewalk, the sharp move, said with functional annoyance, it's not intended to be personal or hostile.
It is simply a systemic effort to facilitate movement, to maintain flow, and to preserve everyone's ultimate scarce resource, their time. Once you understand this underlying mechanism, once you internalize the fact that everyone around you is engaged in the same high-speed calculation, the city feels far less antagonistic.
You start to recognize the rhythm.
You do.
Yeah.
You realize you are not the target of hostility. You are simply a component in a synchronized, high-speed human machine. And understanding your role in that machine is the key to both surviving and eventually mastering the New York Minute.
And that structural reality, it leads us to the larger picture. The final provocative thought we want to leave you with, long after this deep dive is complete.
We spent this time deeply contrasting cultures that prioritize efficiency, exemplified by this linguistic velocity and transactional brevity, against cultures that prioritize phatic communication, politeness, relationship building, social warmth. These are 2 fundamentally different operating systems for human interaction. Each one has its own advantages and its own costs.
So think about this cultural tension in a global context. We hear all the time about misunderstandings in international business. Is it possible that sometimes that misunderstanding is simply the result of a clash between these 2 systems? A culture that values the relationship preamble.
And one that values getting straight to the action items.
Exactly.
When a New York executive travels abroad and finds the first meeting is moving so slowly because the host is engaging in 15 minutes of polite conversation about family and hobbies, that New Yorker feels obstructed. They view it as inefficiency.
But conversely, when someone from a relationship-first culture comes to New York and is hit immediately with the demand, get to the point, what do you need? They feel insulted. They view it as rudeness or a lack of respect.
So the question to leave you with is this. What is the unseen, perhaps emotional cost of this relentless efficiency that defines the New York Minute? Is the measurable time saved in millions of transactions worth the potential erosion of social warmth and shared pleasantries?
And on the other side of that coin, what is the cost of absolute politeness? How much time cumulatively across an entire society or a global economy is structurally lost by rigidly maintaining those social cushioning rituals?
Is there a sustainable middle ground? A truly efficient equilibrium between the imperative to move fast and the deeply human need for connection and acknowledgement? That is the deeper tension created and sustained by the velocity of the New York Minute.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the velocity of social codes.
Keep observing, keep analyzing, and keep thinking critically about the invisible rules that govern our movements and our language, no matter where you find yourself.